Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1980 comedy classic, The Blues Brothers. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I would like to give a special shout out to Sean for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. A link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Blues Brothers is one of those films that I had seen bits and pieces of growing up. I was definitely very aware of the Blues Brothers because I grew up watching the first 5 seasons of SNL on DVD. So I'd watched their appearances on SNL tons of times, but I didn't grow up with the movie, surprisingly enough. But I did see it all the way through once when I was in my teens, didn't mind it. Then saw it when I was a young adult. And honestly, this is one of those films that each time that I watch it, the more and more I love it. And it's one of those films that I could definitely say is one of my favorites of the genre. It's definitely one of my favorite comedies, and honestly one of my favorite films. I love the Blues Brothers. I think it's a stone cold cool classic. It's directed by John Landis, and I really like American Werewolf in London, and I enjoy Animal House and other films that John Landis has done in his filmography. But I gotta be honest, this might be my favorite of his. It definitely features, in my opinion, some of his finest work as a director. There's a lot of shots in this, from the opening shot that is displaying the foundries in Chicago. Uh, it's just a really cool establishing shot that has a mood and atmosphere to it that honestly is completely atonal to what you might expect out of a Blues Brothers movie, but it just makes it stand out all the more. And for a film that is very surreal, it honestly is something that I love. I love the opening. And throughout the film, there's just a lot of great establishing shots, just like the opening shot in the film. The way that he shoots the whole sequence where Jake is let out on parole and you don't see his face and you just see the back of his head, and it's just following him around. It's just a really impressive bit of directing. And then it just continues throughout the film. Like the various different car chases, the various different stunt sequences, the zany madcap comic book moments of violence and chaos, the way that he shoots the musical numbers, it just has this consistent thumping energy and beat throughout that's just infectious. And he does a great job visually escalating things too, like in the opening scene where things just kind of start off a little small and a little understated, but then as the film goes on, it gets more and more crazy and wild and inventive when it comes to the plot as well as the direction. So yeah, I think Landis did a remarkable job with this, and it's easily to this day uh, some of his best work as a director. I mean, the way that he worked with different camera angles, the way that he worked with a lot of pans and zooms and wide shots and overhead shots. I mean, this man was shooting sequences from a helicopter in some scenes. Like, this is renegade, just wild filmmaking. And it really pays off because the film itself is that kind of movie tonally. It's a very wild and just over the top romp. And so the direction matching that is definitely something that is really one of the film's best elements. And then you have a genuinely solid and at times spectacular screenplay by John Landis and Dan Aykroyd. Now, Dan Aykroyd, as Dan is prone to do, his original script for this was as many pages as the Yellow Pages. It was like 250 plus pages long. And when John Landis was brought on as director, he pared it down considerably. He trimmed the rough edges and was able to really help Dan hone his vision for the film. And I think it was all for the better, for sure, because Dan is a very analytical. He's the type of guy who does a lot of extra work and extra dialogue and extra elements of a script that a lot of people might consider to be overkill. So having somebody who can really take those bits and pieces out or at least carve them down and make it into something more palatable, but also not losing the spirit or the whole point of the script is something that I feel is, I don't know if I would say impressive, but it's definitely quite a feat. And I think the fact that John Landis was also directing it and he did a lot of the writing, a lot of the tune-up writing, it just makes what he brought to this film all the more impressive. Like it really does. Now, the basic plot of this is just the Blues Brothers going on a mission from God to save the orphanage because they are orphans and they were raised in this orphanage by Sister Mary Stigmata, who they call the Penguin, and this resident who lives there named Curtis, who's a father figure for the Blues Brothers. And Curtis still lives in this orphanage, so the Blues Brothers, they not only are on a mission to save the orphanage, to enable these kids to have a place to stay and save Sister Mary's job, but they're also there to save the home of their father figure in Curtis. And they go to a church due to the advice by Curtis to listen to the word of a particular father, Reverend Cleophas James, the pastor of the Triple Rock Baptist Church. And this is where Elwood and Jake have this epiphany, where they realize that in order to save the orphanage, they need to get the band back together, the Blues Brothers band. And so they go on this journey to get all of the band members to rejoin the band and to set things up so they can save the orphanage with one big concert by the end of the movie. And that's the basic gist of the plot. It's simple, but it works. There's enough there to create a consistent driving force throughout the script. And because of its simplicity, I think that allows a lot of the other madcap, zany, comic book, surreal, dreamlike elements to have a genuine place in the story. And it provides a lot of opportunities for those moments to shine and to also be a prominent part of the overall story. Like the stuff involving Jake's ex girlfriend, um, the mystery woman, his former fiance, who tries to kill him in various different crazy, wild, inventive ways throughout the film. Tries to blow him up with a flamethrower, tries to shoot him with an assault rifle, tries to blow him up with a bazooka and uh, dynamite. And not only that, you have all the various different people who were trying to stop the Blues Brothers from getting to their destination once they get all the band members together. And you've got the cops, as well as this group of Illinois Nazis and these country western singers who are pissed off at the Blues Brothers because they stole their gig and caused them to get into a wreck and get into trouble with the police. And there's just a lot of stuff that just escalates throughout the script and the overall story until it culminates in the big musical number, but also in just an orgy of car crashes and just an insane uh, finale that involves the Blues Brothers in a race against time, trying to get to this tax office so they can pay the tax guy so the orphanage isn't taken away. And so they're getting chased by every cop in the city. They are also getting chased and being hounded by firefighters, a SWAT team, the military, people on helicopters. It's just batshit insane by the end of this movie. And also, of course, the Illinois Nazis and the country western singers and all of that. And it's one of the things that I think some people might think it's too much, but I think it's one of the main reasons why I love this film is that it's just so unbelievably over the top by the end, to the point where it's uproariously funny. You've got the SWAT team guys going hut 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 hut, and it's just the sheer absurdity of everything in the climax is a sight to behold. And so is the other stuff before that, like in terms of just the musical numbers. There's a lot of stuff involving the musical numbers, like the scene at Ray's music place. Um, Ray Charles, he not only does a musical number, but he shows his comedic chops when fires a gun at this kid who's trying to steal a guitar, and it's insinuated that he can somehow see even though he's blind. And or the sequence with Aretha Franklin, and other moments involving the Blues Brothers trying to get the band back together, the various different places that they are going to find the next band member, like this one guy who works at this snooty restaurant, and Elwood and Jake just really standing out when they decide to eat there, and them just being obnoxious and essentially blackmailing him to join the band. Or even just moments like in the opening of the film, like when Elwood picks up Jake at the prison, or what happens after that when they go to the the church. They go to the orphanage first, and Stigmata, she's just like smacking them with this ruler in just such an unruly fashion, and there's a really just uproarious moment that ends everything where you got Jake who's still in this like kids uh um desk, like seat and desk combo, and he's stuck in it and he falls down the stairs, and it's just a riot. It's so funny. And just the very first car chase and everything that ensues after it is some of the best exciting, thrilling moments you'll see in a comedy. Like it's stuff that's on par with actual action movies when it comes to the car chases. And I just love the fact that the car is just inexplicably magic too, and it can just do random stunts and break the laws of gravity. And then it's a really fun idea. Um, but yeah, it's such a just fun script that has a consistent vibe and tone throughout it that matches the two dynamic leads perfectly. There are moments for musical numbers, but they don't feel like they're out of place. They feel like they're right at home, and they don't feel like they're padding or anything. Even moments where the Blues Brothers are doing a performance at a country western bar is really entertaining, at least to me personally. Or the moments where they fend off these Illinois Nazis. I love that this film and this script, it goes places that a lot of comedies, a lot of films nowadays won't. Like it has some serious balls. Like not only do you have like Nazis in this, but you have like the cops chasing the Blues Brothers. You have the whole scene where they completely demolish an entire mall during a car chase. And there's just a lot of different, just really inventive, really wild, really crazy elements of this script that just make it shine so much. And yeah, I do love that it has some balls when it comes to its comedy. Like, I wish more films today had the guts to do some of the things that the Blues Brothers does when it comes to the screenplay. And I mean, you can't talk about the Blues Brothers without talking about the cast. I mean, John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd are one of the best cinematic dynamic duos out there. They already proved their worth in SNL and in live performances. What makes this duo so iconic is not just the fact that they are unbelievably funny and just have just the utmost chemistry with one another. It's also the fact that they're genuinely good, if not great musicians. Like, they can carry a tune and carry it well. And the Blues Brothers band in particular is just a great band with a good horn section, a good drummer, good bass player, uh, piano guy. Like it's a great band, and it leads to a very unique kind of duo to head a film, because very rarely do you see a movie where you have two funny comedians in their prime, but also two people who can make you laugh and groove all at once or all at the same level. And I can't honestly think of anything else like it, to be honest. I really can't when it comes to a duo like that. And yeah, Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, I mean, I cannot sing enough praises when it comes to John and Dan. They step into these roles with ease because a lot of ways these two characters, they represent Dan and John in a numerous multitude of ways. the blues singer who does acrobatic stunts and stuff like that, and is the wild heartbeat of the band, is John Belushi. And Dan Aykroyd is the heart and the soul, and he's the one that provides a harmonica solo every now and then. He's the glue that keeps everything together, and the deadpan moments between Dan and John in this are comic gold, as is their moments when they're performing live on stage. Like, they even make the song Rawhide like really entertaining and enjoyable to listen to. And just that entire sequence, because of just the deadpan between the two of them. And of course, we're on a mission from God. And all that other stuff, the dinner table sequence between the two, and it's just a treat. It's a genuine joy to watch these two together. And you can tell that they were incredibly close friends, like to the point where they were like brothers in real life. And the fact that John was doing all kinds of drugs, and probably Dan too, and when it comes to this era of these two doing projects together, and for them to not really show that on screen is a testament to their talent. It really is. Like, John in particular, like, he was doing everything, like tons of cocaine. He was also dealing with a lot of injuries throughout the shooting of the film. When it comes to that sequence in the opening with sister Sigmata, and Jake falls down the stairs, like, that actually really hurt John. Like, he really hurt himself doing that. And later on in the production, he was playing around with a skateboard that one of the kids on set had, and he slipped and he hurt his knee really badly. And this was before they started shooting the climactic concert scene. So the studio was frazzled, and they were like, okay, get the best anesthesiologist available and have him shoot up John with as much anesthesia as possible so he can go out and do it and do the climactic sequence, because we can't finish this film without that. And the fact that John was still able to have the same amount of energy, he was still able to act at the same level as what he was doing previously, while he was shot up with God knows how much painkillers and anesthesia, is genuinely incredible. So yeah, Belushi and Aykroyd, just a dynamic duo for the ages as the Blues Brothers. There isn't another duo like them back then or since. And Cab Calloway is great too as Curtis. I really loved his performance in this. There's certain charm and certain sense of humor that he had that was really a lot of fun, and he had really good chemistry with Aykroyd and Belushi, and the whole Minnie the Moocher bit that he did was great. Ray Charles was a lot of fun in his small role doing the Shake a Tail Feather musical number. Aretha Franklin was great when she did the whole Think sequence. And then you have the other members of the Blues Brothers band: Steve Cropper, Donald Duck Dunn, Murphy Dunn, Willie Too Big Hall, Tom Bones Malone, Blue Lou Marini, Matt Guitar Murphy, Mr. Fabulous. The band members, they're not the best actors, but you can tell that they are having fun with it. and that goes a long way for me. It also helps that they don't really have a ton of dialogue and a ton of moments where the script or the film has to rely upon them that much, because it's more about Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi or Calloway. Um, Carrie Fisher was fantastic. I loved her performance in this as this no nonsense, just ruthless, murderous fiance, um, who works at the curl up and dye hair salon. Which I love the title of that hair salon. Henry Gibson, who I remember as Jack Putter's boss from Inner Space, the complete opposite of this head of the Illinois Nazi party, but it just shows his talent as an actor. Like, he could play like the harmless boss who never heard of Flea from Inner Space, but then also play the head Nazi of the Illinois Nazi party, and a pretty decent villain to me personally. John Candy was great in his small role as Jake's parole officer. He improvised a lot of stuff. The Orange Whip sequence, for instance, that bit totally improvised by John Candy, was not in the script. Orange Whip, Orange Whip, 3 orange whips. And the whole moment where he grabs the radio after the car smashes into the semi trailer, and he's like, "What car is this? Car 55. Car 55 here. We're in a truck." Like, I think that was all improvised by John Candy as well. Like, John was so much fun in this. I wish he was in it more. That's one of the few things about this film that I honestly wish was done differently. I wish John Candy had a bigger role in this. John Lee Hooker, who did the song "Boom Boom," which I think that might have been in the extended version, not in the theatrical cut. Kathleen Freeman as the Penguin, the nun who leaves the orphanage. She was hilarious. Steve Lawrence had a fun bit as Maurice Line, the agent who's trying to book the show for the Blues Brothers. Frank Oz had a really just laugh out loud hilarious deadpan moment in the beginning where he played the guy who's handing out Jake's belongings, and you have the whole bit where he's like, 1 prophylactic, unused, 1 prophylactic, soiled. Like, just the way that he did that whole scene was hilarious. It shows that Frank Oz was just a immensely talented guy in a multitude of different ways. Jeff Morris is Bob, the owner of Bob's Country Bunker. Had fun with him, and Charles Napier, who played the lead singer of the Good Old Boys. Stephen Williams, who I remember from The X-Files, as well as Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, and It, the 1990 film. He was in this as one of the cops who follows Jake and Elwood around. And yeah, it's a good cast for sure, but definitely headlined by Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, who are in rare form here. The film also features some cinematography by Stephen M. Katz, which is pretty strong, pretty good. So is the editing by George Folsey. But when it comes to technical aspects of the production, I definitely want to mention the stunt performers, especially the car stunt guys. This film set a record at the time for the most car crashes ever put on film, and it's just an absolute avalanche of car crashes in this, and it's all executed brilliantly and very well. And it's not just the car crashes that are well done, it's the other car chases and just anything that has a lot of kinetic energy to it. I mean, there's a whole sequence where the Illinois Nazis, they fall off a bridge, and I swear to God, they dropped an entire car from like midair, and they're shooting the car as it's falling down, and they use some miniature work to show the car smashing through the pavement, and it looks great. And there's all this other stuff involving explosions and a lot of just crazy wild moments that just has some really great effects. The explosion of the motel, the scene where the propane tank gets blown up by Carrie Fisher and her flamethrower, and the telephone booth that Elwood and Jake are in flies through the air and then it lands on the ground. Like for a 1980 film, it has some really impressive visual and practical effects. Even the moment where Jake is he's getting the shine by the Holy Spirit. Like even when that moment happens at the church, it's also a really nice looking visual effect. And the budget is definitely on the screen. It says 27.5 million, but that doesn't count the other costs. Uh, the real budget for this was around 30. And at the time, it was a record amount of money. And it wound up costing as much as it ultimately did for a multitude of different reasons. For one, it went over budget, and Landis had all these outlandish, crazy ideas for the film. And so he had the idea for all of his car crashes and like the finale, and so that led to the film being delayed or extended further when it comes to the shoot, and just more and more money was then piled into it, and there's all these other damages that they had to pay as well, on top of things, and donate stuff to charities to make up for mistakes that were made with the production, and it was just insanity. Like the film itself is crazy, and the behind the scenes and the making of the film is just as crazy as the movie itself. And yeah, it's like 133 minutes. I personally think it's rather well paced, and that's with the end credits. Like you take out the end credits and it's not as long. It's only a little bit over 2 hours. And I know for the most part, comedies kind of drag if they're too long. I don't really feel that way about the Blues Brothers, because in a lot of ways it's like an epic concert film, like an epic musical. So it's a R-rated madcap uh, comic book musical. That's what it is. And I think the bigger it is, the better it is. I don't really have a problem with the pacing. I don't have a problem with the various amounts of musical numbers. I even like the whole country western bar scene. That's just me personally. I like the fact that things just get progressively crazier and zanier when it comes to all these different people who are trying to stop the Blues Brothers. I like the long extended sequences of car crashes. Like I like a lot of that stuff about it, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Like even simple moments like Elwood and Jake spending the night at Elwood's place at this motel, and the trains are going by like almost every minute, and just the way that that whole sequence was set up and the set was done, it was just really terrific. And the immersion that this film has, despite the fact that it's so over the top and comic book fueled, is genuinely great. And yeah, it's one of those films that honestly I could watch it again and again and still have just as good of a time as I did with the film the last time that I saw it. And I think it also helps that I'm a big music guy. For most of my life, I've been a music guy. You know, I've played piano, I've sung blues, I've been in choir for many, 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 many years. So I think that also helps. And I'm a huge fan of the Blues Brothers anyway, from their days in SNL. And I even have like a cassette tape of Briefcase of Blues, an album that the two did. So like I already like this music. So I think if you're not really as big of a fan of the music, I can get it. I can understand why it might not be as fun of a time for you. It might kind of drag a bit, but I love it. So the multiple musical numbers, like they just add to my enjoyment of the movie. And just the climactic concert scene is one of my favorite concert scenes in any film. The whole moment where the Blues Brothers just tear the house down with "I Need You" is just, or "I Need Somebody," like that is just such a great sequence and just a grand, awesome cinematic moment. It really is. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Blues Brothers. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya. She called the kitty, left me a mule to ride. Bam, 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 bam. She called the kitty and left me a mule to ride. Down, 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 down. Now my baby caught the kitty, left me a mule to ride. The train pulled out, I swung on behind. Crazy about her, that hard-headed woman of mine. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba.